All right, guys, I'm just really excited. Welcome to another episode of Instant Payments Decoded. For those of you who don't already know me, I'm Marcia Klingensmith. I'm the Instant Payments Maven, and I help financial institutions and fintechs with their payments modernization strategies using instant payments as the low-hanging fruit. I provide business clarity, implementation confidence, and stakeholder support. And today we're going to dive into a topic that's transforming the way we all think about payments, artificial intelligence. And so some of the themes that I see in my conversations with my global clients and things that I come up with that come up when I work with different financial institutions and fintechs. People wonder, where does AI plug in? Like, how does it help them with instant payments? How does it help them with payments modernization? And so I thought it would be a great idea to frame a conversation around how AI can help with instant payments. So from personalization, reconciliation, fraud detection, all that. So I brought these lovely ladies in to help us unpack this. They're just two incredible people. So we have Dr. Angela Murphy, also known as Payments Elsa. And she's a marketer with Pigeon, which is a third-party service provider for instant payments. And we have Jacqueline Rinehart, who's a JD and MBA, and she's also a transformation journey expert, and she specializes in creating integrated AI-driven operational products and addresses risk, and she does user experiences across the payments and financial services space. Welcome, Elsa, Jacqueline. So let's start with a quick intro. Angela, why don't you go first?
Yeah, absolutely. Hello, everyone. My name is Angela Murphy. It's so great to see you all here, and I'm excited to be a part of the conversation. I am also, as Marcia said, known as Payments Elsa in the payments industry. I do a lot of thought leadership around artificial intelligence, faster payments, B2B payments, and strategy and innovation. I've been in the industry for several years now, doing different panel opportunities, keynote speeches, writing articles, and creating video content to make these complex concepts in the payments industry more digestible and accessible for both practitioners and also for end users. I'm excited to be here.
Awesome. Jacqueline?
Well, first off, Marcia, thank you so much for having Angela and myself join together in the payments community. AI is such a fast-moving topic that converges across all different fronts, one of which is really enhancing the fast, reliable, and trusted instant payments space. So excited to be here and bring my background in transformation, in fintech, and also in payments, and also more broadly in financial services.
Awesome. Okay, so thanks for the overview, gals. And before we jump in, I want to just get a quick sense of where our audience stands. So I have a little poll that I'm going to be launching. So if it doesn't pop up on your main screen, I want you to look for it in the chat. And that's one thing to note as we're doing this. Like, we love interaction. So as we're going through, if you have questions, you can put them in chat. I think you can probably raise your hands and we can try and take you off mute and get your questions. We definitely want this to be interactive, and these ladies are experts, and so let's have some fun. So our first question is, like, how is AI currently driving value in your financial institutions' payments modernizations? Whether it's fraud prevention, reconciliation, personalization, operational efficiencies. Let us know. We wanna get insights. So if you haven't, so check out the poll. Again, it's either going to be a pop or it's going to be in your Q&A. So if you could do that. And I think while we're waiting on folks to do their poll questions, let's talk a little bit about AI's potential. So Angela, like, in your view, what is, I don't know, the most exciting role that AI plays in payments today?
I think where I have the most excitement is in the merging of AI and instant payments. I know that a lot of talk tracks focus on fraud and risk management and artificial intelligence. And there's a lot of great information out there about how people are reconceptualizing the way that AI can help with those things. And I know we're going to talk about that a little bit today. But for me, I really think that the most interesting application for AI right now is in faster payments and streamlining payments processes that have historically been broken, particularly in the United States. So my background, I started out in B2B payments, and seeing all of the manual processes that are associated with reconciling B2B payments, I think that there's a massive opportunity to streamline those operations, as well as to use artificial intelligence to then provide better data to not only practitioners, but also to financial institutions and to merchants and the supply chain to optimize how they're engaging in different payments behaviors.
Yeah, and I think data is where I think the whole industry is going. I know that we got the Dodd-Frank thing coming up, which is going to be we're going to have a follow-on session for that. But, data that you get from open banking can inform those payments. But Jacqueline, like, I know you're always talking about how everything starts with your transformation journeys. So why don't you explain your view on why it's so critical to invest in and incorporate like advanced technologies like AI in the experience?
Yeah, so as we're all watching, there is a kind of a buzz around reshaping how organizations think about how they manage their business and customers. And so when we take a look at it and we think about transformation, that lens to me is important, because transformation is about not just the technology, but taking a step back and looking at the process and the business. So, AI, when we say, oh, it's reshaping everything, an aspect of it is when it comes to when organizations are looking at it to embrace the right use cases. But what stays constant with AI are the business fundamentals, along with the goal of delivering enhanced, trusted, and reliable instant payments. So for me, when I think about, Angela's particularly excited about the just instant payments of streamlining those processes, I still like to anchor looking at it from a transformation perspective, and we'll talk about the people components of it later. But when you think about where those opportunities are, grounding it in things that we've all continued to want to do in this space, which is sort of enhanced, trusted, and reliable framing, those are the three things that I think about. So I do think, for instance, number one, enhancement, as Angela touched on, we can deliver faster and easier processes. But in addition to the processes, we can use those processes also for personalization. So thinking about AI efficiency across consumer and merchant and institutional fronts, there are things around, number one, process enhancements, where things are automated, mapping accounts payable and receivables in real time. Angela touched upon better processes, and I think that process enhancements really can help with that. So for instance, if I'm JP Morgan and I'm using the clearinghouse's RTP or chips payments for an AI-driven automated settlement aspect, reconciliation is still an issue. If I'm similarly Venmo, leveraging Visa, Direct, or MasterCard rails, those reconciliation opportunities around process can reduce by that 2 to 3 day window where there are lags currently. You look at personalization. It can optimize an onboarding, financial management, and routing. So you have things like pre-populating data, using that open banking API protocol, looking at things, helping users use cash flow management, or just doing smart payments, routing all around, looking at the best rail based upon user time and needs. So whether that's chip, RTP, ACH, FedNow, FedWire. So there's, again, a lot going on in enhancements. And then just to shorten it, but give you that full spectrum of what we're looking at in our conversation today, aside from that reconciliation element, looking at things, enhanced, but trusted and reliable. So trust front, AI, Angela touched on it for fraud detection and prevention. To me, that's it's not just one or the other when we look at this, it's holistically all the top of mind opportunities. So fraud prevention really helps up the game around behavioral anomalies and velocity patterns, preventing that holistic contextual element where currently we don't necessarily have had that yet without AI entering the scenes. Additionally, I like to sort of the thing that I get most excited about in promoting AI transformation, aside from the people-driven lens, is, we talked about enhanced, we talked about trusted payment experiences, and we want reliable. So when I think about reliable, I get most excited around pushing the AI governance agenda. It's always my go-to, and people sometimes think of it as a bureaucratic process, but it's not.
We need the sexy word for governance. I think we were talking about that because, like, I gave the term ISO for ISO 20022. We're calling it like the financial Rosetta Stone. So I know for governance, like governance is so important, but like we need a sexier name for it. Did you come up with one?
We do. And kind of to your suggestion when we were talking about it, since this AI governance is sort of my theme of the month, I couldn't get ChatGPT or anybody else to like give me some additional ideas. I think the thing that stood out when I had been writing about this topic this past month was the idea that it's the key to the accelerator, like rapid acceleration that delivers trust, reliability, versus like if you just adopt AI, it's sort of this technology is like accelerated, but it's on a bridge that's going to crumble. But getting it into one word can't do it. But the idea that AI governance, it's not a process, it's sort of like a checklist, particularly in our industry where you're looking at data and model integrity, security, that end-to-end process and architecture, ethics, bias, risk, malicious vulnerabilities. These are all concepts that don't reshape the industry. They've always been a part of it. And keeping that continuation of looking as governance as that anchoring checklist to keep that reliability in place as you're adding in new technologies and new approaches in addressing some of the topics we'll talk about more today around reconciliation, around personalization, around risk management.
I love it. Wow, that was a lot of stuff to unpack.
A lot of stuff.
We talked about governance, we talked about reliability, we talked about like personalization and like the accounts payable, accounts receivable reconciliation. That one's like a huge one because I think today there's still like 36% or more of business checks that are, of businesses that write checks. And, there's a lot of manual processes there where, when with instant payments, you get the rich data that you feed. And I think you were talking about like enriching the data with like Angela was talking about how you could use AI to kind of analyze that data. So I think it's all coming together. And so just let me just tell you what we saw on the polls. So the fraud prevention looks like it's taking #1 spot so far. And if you guys haven't already responded to the polls, like I'm going to keep the polls up the whole event because we're just kind of curious to see where people land on these things. And if it's not a pop, it'll be in your chat window. So go look for that. So right now, fraud prevention is first. Like a quarter of folks haven't yet done anything with AI, a quarter operational efficiencies, and then one person for personalization, one person for reconciliation. And I mean, I guess I'd love to get your y'all's perspective on, does that seem right? I think it does seem like we're still in the infancy. So reconciliation, personalization being on the low side, I think that makes sense because it requires more thought on designing those things. I don't know if you ladies have a perspective on that.
Yeah, I think it kind of lines up with what I've been seeing in the space, especially talking to financial services professionals, talking to banks. Their primary interest in it is fraud prevention because that's, a huge issue, and understanding how that maps onto challenges within their institution overall. I think it also gets back to, fraud prevention in payments as well. So the whole idea around the over-reliance on checks and trying to move those payments behaviors to more electronic transactions, and then, making sure that the merchants, that the end users are educated on how risky it is to send a check, to use a check. I mean, I know I talked to a bank about 18 months ago, and they had a $90 million check washing fraud issue within their
That's
bank that they
huge.
didn't catch for 2 months.
Yeah. Wow. Ouch.
Yeah. So, and nobody wants that, right? So I definitely see a lot when I talk to banks, they're like, how do we use this to help prevent fraud? Because I mean, the pie in the sky is we don't want any fraudulent transactions, but we all know that's never going to happen. But AI can get us into a space where you're not having a human that's constantly there trying to check for fraud. They can have an AI layer in there that does a lot of the minutia and the groundwork, and then the escalations can then go to a human in consultation with the AI to figure out what's going on in those situations. I see a hand went up. I'm very interested to hear this question.
Yeah. Okay. Can we, did you take them off? Hey, Connor?
Can you hear me all right?
Yeah. Go for it.
Great, yeah. This is Connor. I'm with SRM, a consultancy that does a lot of work with FIs. So where do you guys see AI making its way into the fraud ecosystem? So from what I've been seeing, largely it's the big payments companies and vendors like your Visa, MasterCard, Verifin, who are integrating generative AI into their existing fraud models. So like using LLMs to parse the open text that comes with like wires or transfers or transactions to add an additional layer and improve their accuracy. Rather than like individual banks and FIs doing much of their own work. So I wanted to validate if that's sort of what you're seeing in the kind of smaller and community FI space as far as AI for fraud. And then the question of like, is that the right play for those financial institutions to just let the vendors do kind of the main lift and risk of integrating new AI into their models, or if they should be doing something for themselves?
Well, let me take it first, and then we'll go round robin. I love the question. I think that's really great. It's AI has been around for a while, right? So Gen AI is just kind of the latest iteration, and so AI has been a great tool for fraud prevention detection for a while, and so like one of the lowest cost methods of kind of detecting a bad actor when you're thinking about security is doing like a device profiling, because it's just once you have a system in place, which it requires most likely a third-party system, because it's really hard for, banks are in the business of managing finances and lending and all that. They're not in the business of cybersecurity. So I think it's important to pick a good tech partner. But one of the cheapest and most effective ways to prevent the bad actors is to do device profiling. Look at a digital persona, look at the device profiling, look at that interaction with the digital device and see, like, is there, some sort of velocity, like how many names are associated with that device? If there's only supposed to be one and you're seeing 20 people that are newly attached to that device, it's probably going to be a bad actor, right? Are we seeing bot attacks? What is the behavior? Is there copy pasting on forms where, it's enter somebody's name and it probably should just be in a drop down or something, So there's a lot of tools, and Angela was mentioning kind of like the layers of defense. Is like there's a lot of different tools that can be applied in these just in this initial touch point. And then of course, analyzing a transaction to say, are we seeing velocities? And then of course, then the layer you were talking about data. So I'm going to pause there because there's definitely a lot more I can say, but I definitely want to give my gals here a voice because they're also experts in this space. Okay, Angela, why don't you go next, and then Jacqueline.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Connor, I think that's a great question. Thank you for chiming in. I do a lot of work with community banks and community financial institutions, smaller credit unions, bankers, banks, kind of that wide range of constituencies within my day job. So I get to talk to a lot of these folks. And I would say, as somebody who currently works for a third-party service provider, that I do believe that banks should be looking for a third-party service provider, looking for a fintech that already has this technology developed. I know that it is challenging for smaller institutions, even within their own product roadmap to accomplish everything that's there. And to Marcia's point, we're in the business of money movement and financial services and securitizing those transactions for our account holders. There are experts out there that are living, eating, breathing, sleeping artificial intelligence applications and technologies and how that works within the financial services sector. So my advice is to, yes, like vet some potential partners to help you with some of the more painful internal processes at your institution. And in particular, as it relates to fraud, looking at what some of the best practices are out there. I know that a lot of the larger players are developing their own tools and developing their own models and things like that. But for smaller institutions, if you work with a nimble provider, it also gives you the ability to kind of stay out in the conversation and stay ahead of the game. Some of the feedback that I've received over time about artificial intelligence and working with a service provider in AI in particular is that there's just like this fear of like, what if we get it wrong type of a thing, or we don't know what to do, or we're not sure. And the thing is, you can't really wait and see on this because the people who are bad actors are already using the technology themselves to get one over. And not the first place, but I've actually started seeing a trend where fraud rings are now targeting smaller financial institutions because they know that they do not have the technical acumen to catch up to them fast enough. And so I would really like community FIs, smaller banks, credit unions to push back against that trend.
Yeah, I think that's the thing. Definitely. So Jacqueline, do you have a perspective you want to share?
I do. I heard a bunch of things. Chris, you asked a couple layered questions. I saw Seth put his thumb up as well in terms of fraud detection. So my perspective is a bit balanced, and it takes a step back in terms of balance of like size of organizations and what they're doing. So first off, is fraud detection the direction that people are automatically going toward versus for other areas? And I always, whatever size organization, I have folks pause and figure out what are you trying to do and the basics of really what your business case is, and then make that decision of where you want to go. So for instance, larger institutions and smaller have been, when it comes to fraud detection, there have been AI capabilities versus LLM capabilities that still do, yes, I see that, Seth, right? Sorry, I lost my train of thought. I do see folks in determining, and this is, I think, the distinction of AI versus Gen AI. There are AI-based solutions that are not as expensive as LLMs that can still do things around geospatial anomaly detection, behavioral analysis. They can't do, let's say, an LLM, which adds in another layer of adaptive learning. So when you're looking at adapting a fraud prevention or detection, right, you have to say, well, I think the leaning is, and I even big to small, why are we going to do something ourselves? Let's have the right and tried vendor come in to plug it and make sure it makes sense within our existing ecosystem. But that doesn't necessarily mean you're going to jump to LLM. Similarly, when you pause and look at where you're going to spend those investment dollars and the strategy that you want, AI itself and those tech capabilities may seem better for you to be doing, but let's say if you're, what's really important is the reconciliation process, where you can be moving quick. It may be important to move things quicker to let's say you're a Venmo, a third-party provider, and you want that gap to get your that closing window. Reconciliation might be better for you. Or let's say you're focused on just the moving money factor, so reconciliation decision to go with instant payments may be more important because the incremental investment to do LLM with all its risks, that's where governance comes in, all the risk vectors and vulnerabilities that introduces into the equation may not be worth it. So I think you have to contextualize between, do I want to make an AI versus Gen AI? And is that incremental investment in an LLM technology, is that really where I want to go? Or do I want to adopt a low risk, potentially high profile investment in, let's say, reconciliation for my business objective? So, again, it's like pause, look at business, keep what's the objective, what's the purpose, what's the ROI, where your investment dollars are going to get you the biggest bang. And then do you want to move forward knowing that the incremental gain may or may not be the direction where you want to go, and move it somewhere else. And that's personalization, and we'll get to it. I know Marcia has a big.
Well, that's
thing.
That's
another thing.
I love.
What does that mean, and is that a better investment? And we'll get there, Marcia.
Yeah, no, I love that kind of focus on, like, the trade-offs, and we have a hand raised, but just kind of like making a comment on that, because I love how, it's all about trade-offs, right? All these financial institutions have a lot of pressing needs, and of course fraud's always top of mind for everyone, and there's tech partners there, but it's an investment. Like, getting the right tool is an investment, and it's all about layers of defense. Like, you might need multiple partners, and then how do you pick which partner you need to work with, or where do you focus? Is it, like, to your point, fraud detection or reconciliation? And one of the other things, and we'll go to the question in just a minute, but one other thought, right, is because I'm the Instant Payments Maven, and I'm always obsessing about instant payments all the time. But instant payments is, it's even though people think faster payments equals faster fraud, it's actually lower risk, because the transaction, it happens in real time, and people will know on both sides whether it was sent or received. And so you have confidence in where that money went. And so by putting the right thresholds in place, you can stop fraud in its tracks. But also the other thing that happens is there's a lot of settlement risk, right, that happens with an ACH, with a Venmo or a Zelle, or one of these other payment methods, because there's a delay between when you send the payment and when the payment is received. And the bad actors are really good at exploiting that window. And actually, I heard the term last week, kiting. Like, I've always associated kiting with checks, but there's also faster payment kiting is a thing. And so as we move to this world where instant payments is 24/7, you're actually going to squeeze out the bad actors, because they're going to have less room to play with. And so if you combine instant payments with your fraud detection, AI fraud detection tools, you can squeeze out more of that fraud. Okay, let me see. Okay, so we've got Paulo, who has a question. So let's get him off mute. Let's see. How do I get you off mute?
I think it just did and then went back on.
Oh, gosh. Well,
there you go.
Can you hear me?
Yes. Go ahead.
No, thank you very much, Marcia. No, it was more than a question. It was a comment about that. I just wanted to tell you that I took a course many years ago about AI, and one of the things that Andrew Ng from Stanford emphasizes a lot is about, especially in fraud, about adversarial networks, so GANs. So I think that hasn't stopped, and I think that's very important to have in mind if you want to have the whole picture, because this is especially used by the attackers, the GANs. I don't know if you know, I can just explain it in a minute, but you train two AIs, one that tries to breach the system and the other one to try to defend it, and they go and they learn from each other. And I think that's still how they develop their systems that break our systems. And I think that the best protection is also to do it in the other way around. And that's all. It's just a small comment.
Yeah, no, that's a good comment. We appreciate you kind of highlighting that. I think that's definitely something, like you mentioned, you have these two engines. The bad actors have better technology than we do, because when they exploit the system, they get all this money, and then they can invest in great technology. So they're always going to be ahead of us from a technology perspective. I don't know who, Angela, Jacqueline, one of you guys had a
I
comment.
just wanted to add in,
Yeah.
Paulo, I also like your comment because it reminds us, like, there are aspects. So if you're picking two things in your comment, if you're picking between an AI tool and a Gen AI tool, GAN is more likely to be in the Gen AI scenario. And so, you know, you need to consider and understand the technologies, and similar to the assessments, but also you're going back to things where you think about, when I like to promote going back to the basics, is we sometimes get so excited about the shiny object that we don't necessarily pause in the full decision-making processes. And years ago, as the Stanford lecturer shared, that's important. We don't drop the basics as we embrace a new technology. I like your heart. Thank you. We continue to consider it, and again, pause. Don't get wrapped up in the hype, and figure out, like with our business caps, we're all incredibly seasoned. We've all seen rounds of transformation. Pause and sort of think where the better place is.
Awesome. And I know we got a little bit off. I mean, I don't know, Angela, do you have any more comments on like fraud detection or real-time payments? And because I know we've been kind of going all over. I love it.
No, not on that. I think in some of the things we're going to talk about coming up, particularly in terms of personalization, I kind of have a hot take there. So
Okay,
I'm
let's
saving my
shift
words
gears.
for
Let's
that.
go to personalization. All right, love it. So yeah, of course we hear a lot about AI helping banks get smarter with their customers. So why don't you walk us through your favorite example where AI payment data come together to create like a better user experience?
So there's kind of two sides to this. The first one is one that I've spoken about pretty regularly, and that's in terms of understanding payments behaviors within your institution and then using that to enable better personalization. So banks and credit unions, financial institutions, they have this wealth of data about how payments are made within their institution by their account holders, and using artificial intelligence to create a lake for all of that data that can then be queried in a generative format about how many transactions a day are individuals in our bank making over ACH versus other payments rails. Like, being able to query for that data is a really exciting application. And it does a couple of things, right? It makes sure that the people that work within your institution are better educated about how your institution operates and how payments and money is going in and out of your institution. It enables them to better interact with the account holders if they have that person-to-person relationship with those individuals or with their entities. And then it also, in kind of a more electronic format, one of the statistics that I found out about recently is that it's like 2/3 of business owners don't want, or 2/3 of business owners want an agent-free buying experience. They don't want to interact with a human being. They want to do it on their own, or to be able to work with some kind of a bot to walk them through a process. And so when you think about personalizing offers for, let's say, SMBs even, which is about 68% of the businesses in the United States are SMBs with fewer than 20 employees, I think was the last stat I read on that. But those folks, they don't always have time to be interacting with a human constantly. So having the data lake that can be queried within your institution for your internal teams, but then also within that lake, if a person is on your online banking website or in their digital banking application on their phone, and they're looking at trying to find different information about loans for their small business, having an AI that they can talk back and forth with that knows all of their account data and all their business data of how they've transacted over time to help them choose the appropriate loan for them without it feeling overwhelming and complex is really exciting. So that's kind of one bucket for me that I like to talk about pretty regularly. The other one that I think is super interesting, and it gets back to the comment that we were talking about, the AI, I just lost the term for it because I was talking about agentic AI a few minutes ago. Adversarial networks. Sorry, everybody. I should have had more coffee today. So adversarial networks. I think that there is a very interesting application for adversarial networks within credit decisioning for financial institutions. So for those of you who don't know, and a primer for those of you who might also be well aware of this, FICO was created in the 50s. how we score people and how we determine whether or not they're given access to capital is determined by a metric that was created when I wasn't even allowed to have a bank account on my own. So
Right. In the 50s?
That's outdated. And we
You weren't
need to
even
do something.
born yet.
I wasn't even born yet, but like my grandmother. Well, see, my grandmother was not allowed to open a bank account on her own. So to me, I think that as an industry, we're doing a disservice to not look at how adversarial networks can call out institutional bias for strategically undervalued populations. So taking that model and looking at where money could have been lent or borrowed or provided to strategically undervalued populations, and then using that to make better credit decisions. So of course, like I'm not saying that FICO is going to go away necessarily, but have the adversarial networks have those conversations to map out where the institutional bias is within your bank is a very exciting application. And I also think that it's a way to have better data about whether or not somebody should have that $5,000 loan. If you have all of their payments behavior and their bank account information from, like, let's say the last 5 to 6 years, that's going to tell you a whole lot more about, did they pay their bills? Are they using your bill pay? What other services have they been using within your institution? And that gives you a much better credit risk profile than anything else will. So those are the things that I would really like to see AI do in the future.
Yeah, and just to, I guess, add on that, because, like the Dodd-Frank thing, which could be on the table, but open banking. So when we talk about better data, you can use AI not only to analyze your data, like in the data lake that Angela was mentioning. I was going to just say Elsa was mentioning, but in my mind, those two names keep getting swapped. But, you can not only analyze the data from that data lake, but with open banking, you can get that payment history from that customer from other institutions. And if you use AI to analyze and combine those two, then you can have a really powerful view of that customer to make those underwriting decisions or to make those account access decisions and stuff like that. And just as a little teaser, like I created a little bot that can Angela was talking about how these things can help you navigate your journey. So if if there's any small businesses online and you want to check out my little bot, if you go to fintech-consultant.com, I have a little bot that I'm just playing with. So I would love feedback. If you test it out, I would love to hear like how that experience was. It's supposed to help you on your journey. Okay, and then Jacqueline, personalization. So how are you thinking about personalization? And how do you make sure that they don't just benefit the customer, but that also, when we're thinking about it from an enterprise view, like how does it create efficiencies for the organization?
So, I like that complimentary view. I was ready to jump in. Angela, one of my favorite customer experiences are what Angela mentioned around using AI for routing. So to help all sizes of organizations decide how they want to do their instant payments, picking from all the various capabilities from real-time payments, FedWire, you name it. Like, just give you a couple examples, right? Chips. But to your point, when you kind of in the theme of what's our objectives, why I'm doing things, what's nice about the personalization front is, yes, it makes experiences more relevant, creating more offers for customers, as Angela mentioned. I'm looking down because I took notes on what she said, really offering an inclusionary element to expand more loan opportunities for folks. But with all of this, taking that flip side, Marcia, as you were alluding to, and it also actually creates efficiencies for organizations. And it's a powerful tool to do so. So when financial institutions are offering these tailored customer experiences, at the same time, they're doing three things. And I like to put out like 1, 2, 3, right? They're streamlining decision-making. They're optimizing their resources allocation, and they're reducing friction across the organization. And one of the ways that this plays out is, as Angela was talking about, that intelligent customer engagement. Well, on the back end, yes, you're looking at customer transaction history and spending behavior and life events to give those personalized experience, to drive those improved conversion rates. But actually, on the flip side, you're reducing the need for broad, inefficient marketing campaigns, sending mass emails, instead of internally focusing on those hyper-targeted outreach and lowering overall your, increasing overall your relevancy for your customers. You're also, if you have an AI-powered personalization effort for your customers, you're allowing call centers to route those inquiries more efficiently. You're reducing shorter resolution time for your customers. You're creating a reduced operational strain, which we all know from a customer service call center perspective, that's a real issue. And you're also enhancing that customer satisfaction all at once. Going back to fraud prevention measures, that personalization also reduces that risk to customers so that they aren't constantly getting interrupted by unnecessary security risks. So there's that circuitry of back-end how operational enhancements for the company complements customer personalization. And so again, personalization isn't just about making experiences more relevant, it's about making also your organization more agile, cost effective, and strategically focused.
Oh my God. Those are really good points. So I know there's just, I'm hopefully our audience isn't getting overwhelmed. There's so much great content here.
It's like always 2 seconds.
Love it.
If you put back the basics of like why, and then it really informs what's the best hows. And I'll pause because I have lots more to say about that, but I know we're going to get into that as well.
Well, and we're going to have another poll in a minute, but I guess like two of the interesting things that I mean, there was a lot, but just two interesting things there was like, you were talking about the marketing campaign, everybody's spending all this money on marketing, right? And you could be, instead of spending all those dollars, you be more efficient, you just target, you like to your point, your hyper personalization. Or call centers is a huge cost center for most businesses, and right, AI, that's one of the areas where AI can help so much, especially like even like when we're talking about the generative AI, because now like you can pull information from all these different sources and you can give them the language, the agents the language to talk to the customers in a more consistent format, and making sure that they're not breaching anything. Like it can kind of like be pre-screened with some of the the words that they need to say, and it can capture things and detect sentiment, and so many things, like to your point, so many things. Okay, so we have a poll. We have another poll that I'm going to do here. We love polls. So if I get back to where my polls were. Okay, so the next one is, okay, so if you didn't finish the first one, go ahead and do that, but I'm going to launch the next one. Okay, so this next one is about which AI application would have the biggest impact on your institution right now? And again, like the main themes that we've been covering here. So by the end of this call, if you don't know where AI can be applied in your business, it's not our fault. That's all I got to say. Okay. So fraud prevention, reconciliation, personalization, operational automation. And did somebody have a question? Did I see something come through on a chat or something? Okay, maybe not. Okay, so go ahead and share your perspective. So while we're doing this, okay, now we're gonna like reconciliation. I think Jacqueline, maybe you mentioned it a little bit earlier, but that's one of those areas that really doesn't get the spotlight, but it is really a huge opportunity for AI, and especially, as we enter the instant payment world. Oh, was Paolo's coming on camera. Did you have a question for us, Paolo? Oh, you're on mute. Oh, wait, do we need to take you off mute?
No, sorry, it came by itself. I'm so sorry.
Okay.
You can be here with us. That's fine.
Yeah, it's nice to see a face.
Okay.
Okay, so we're gonna talk about reconciliation. So Angela, so I know you've worked on so many fascinating use cases. So why don't you share one of your ones on reconciliation? Maybe a complex scenario like supply chain with the Internet of Things.
Yeah, so this is, we're talking about the future of what this is going to be, but it also needs to be now. So when I look at applications for artificial intelligence in the supply chain and then how that dovetails with payments, I'm thinking about what happened in the lockdown, right? It was absolute chaos because goods were having trouble moving. It's a very challenging time in our country and in the world to navigate, but it actually highlighted a problem that I've been talking about for years, which is the inefficiencies within supply chain. So that B2B use case, when you're talking about moving goods back and forth across the country, there are a lot of people that are involved in making that happen. And the invoicing process and supply chain in particular is not electronic. You have people with clipboards. You might have somebody with an iPad. I have seen some of that where they're finally getting iPads into some of these warehouses, but it's expensive. It's an expensive upgrade to do, particularly in a high-risk environment where there's pallets and forklifts flying around everywhere. But I'm thinking of a scenario where you have a shipper and you have a carrier. There are items that are on that truck. They arrive to the warehouse and part of the pallet is damaged. Now, the shipper has been invoiced for the full amount of items that are on that pallet, but when there's shrinkage or damage, how do you invoice against that in real time without causing chargeback issues and creating issues with the payment itself? So like if the shipper's paying by a check, that money's already in the mail and somebody's going to get really mad about that, because not only are they having working capital pressure for product that's now not on the shelf, they have a lack of visibility as to when the rest of it is going to get there. And then there might be a double billing issue, because if you're shipping a pallet and a half to cover the half that got damaged in the first place, are you getting billed twice for the same half pallet? Like, these are the inefficiencies that I'm talking about in supply chain. So imagine having the ability to use artificial intelligence to take a picture of the pallet. The AI then does a 3D rendering of what's there, captures that there's 30% of the pallet that's damaged, and then automatically updates the invoice for that shrinkage that then reconciles into the enterprise resource planning, the ERP system for the shipper. So everybody at every phase of that transaction knows that 30% got damaged and that's all that's getting paid for. And it updates in real time. And then when you pair that with a faster payment rail, then the shipper can then initiate an instant payment either on RTP Network or FedNow to go out by close of business that day, 4:59 p.m. Eastern time. And those working capital, those dollars are all accounted for across all those systems. And so I think when we are looking at efficiency, that's something that's really exciting to me.
You know, and you have to put the plug in for ISO 20022, the financial Rosetta Stone, because when you're feeding all that AI data into the ERP systems, you're likely using the rich data that ISO 20022 enables. But I think that's a really fascinating use case. I love the idea of, like, you know, doing your auto capture of the goods and getting it described and attached to the invoice, and then kind of having that smart decisioning happening. I think that's a really great use case. Love that. So, and Jacqueline, like, do you have, how do you think I would recommend to, like, institutions, like, as you're thinking about this, like, how do you maximize the use of these cool technologies?
Well, I like Angela's creative example. And so instead of trying to, provide one, I'll provide a little bit of context, sort of taking a step back, and based upon what Angela said, using her example as something real, how are we framing it? How are we approaching something like a reconciliation or, throughout this efficiencies? And so I like to think of it similar to you sort of, Marcia, and how Angela touched upon it, is there's a process and there's a technology, but I also like to give a plug that there's people. So when you're looking at AI and automation and maximizing those efficiency gains, process is important, and I'll sort of do how I approach it, but also people, because I feel that with an AI technology, it really allows us to take a pause and have humans reimagine and provide their insights to optimize it. And so how I think about it is when institutions think about reconciliation or just overhauling a process, it's critical to kind of first, I always have my 3 steps. First, to reimagine the entire workflow and think about where to automate those steps. So the secret to an AI-driven automation isn't just put in the technology, but it's sort of how Angela alluded to a human approach to looking at that process redesign and then integrating it with that applicable automation opportunity. So with sort of like the human aspect of it, also when you're rethinking the process or the processes, putting in that human-centric design in designing those processes. So number 2, that human-centric view is critical. So it allows you to think about how are employees looking at it? How are my client and customer users looking at it? And lensing practically how humans do their work, synthesize the information, and close out that business transaction that'll create that optimal process that then the technology is layered on. And number 3, we've also touched upon it, aside from the humans relooking at the process, looking at the human design to then layer in the automation, you're looking at, you can't forget that data quality and standardization that goes into that process pipeline. So AI and process automation are really only as good as the data they're working with. So looking at data lineage, metadata management, upstream, downstream process flows, and really the interoperability between process and systems really helps you with those AI reconciliation or efficiency initiatives. And so when you're looking at those 3 things that include people, process, and technology, I like to add in sort of the punchline of, because we're also using these very technologies that are AI-based, we can also layer in that intelligent workflow automation that tells us, aside from our process that we redesigned it, it's an actual overseer of, wow, if a discrepancy does occur, then it can automatically route in. It does a flag and routes in a person and the right teams to really overlay in the contextually aware recommendations. So that's something that the AI may not be able to reconcile. It identifies it as something more complex and brings in the person in real time to focus on what are those high value exceptions that the person can come in and then reconcile the process.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, that was awesome. So I loved, the thought around, I mean, you covered a lot: process redesign, the human element, which is really great. It's always important to think about who's interacting with this. But I love too also that last thing you were talking about, like this intelligent workflow, right? Like when something goes wrong, like being able to detect it, understand what's going on with that situation, and then routing it to the appropriate parties. And I guess that applies to like supply chain. It can apply to call centers. It can apply to transaction management. I mean, like through the enterprise, right?
But having a real example that Angela gave us really allows me to then say, okay, because now these are just thoughts, but everybody hopefully can see, given she was so thorough in that example and the nuances, like all those buzzwords, well, they're not buzzwords, they're factual steps and elements of considering it. We can really see how that plays out the concepts in a really tangible example that she was very passionate about in sharing.
I think we're all very geeky on these things. I love it. I know, it's lovely bringing women together. So I went, for that survey where I was asking, I think about where people were going to be applying this. So it looks like operational automation, improving efficiencies and reducing manual processes seems to be the winner. And then the second one was fraud. So it's interesting that more folks, I don't know if it was because of all the great hyping that you guys did, or if it was, if it's already kind of it was in the works, but it seems like operational efficiencies are a place where people are going to explore. And I think, one of the, that's definitely, there's definitely a lot of room there. So I think do I have one more poll? I think I have one more poll that I wanted to deploy, and we've got about 6 minutes. Okay. So let me launch this one. So the next one is, oh wait, that's live. Okay, hold on. This one is, what are the next steps in leveraging your AI for instant payments? So I guess like must have been, the other one was the last one was which one have the biggest impact? Oh, okay. So operations is where people are working now, and now we're looking forward facing. So this is where you guys, if you could take a look at this and tell us where you're going to go. So fraud was in the past. The operational efficiencies are where people are looking now. Where are we going in the future? So if you guys want to go and take a look at that. Okay, so I guess like we're kind of wrapping up. It's just been a really rich conversation. So, Angela, do you have what's your one final thing that you might want financial institutions to understand about like AI and instant payments?
I think just take a look internally at where the low-hanging fruit is within your institution. There are people within your organization that are engaged in processes that are very painful for them and probably diminishing returns in revenue for your institution overall. So look within your teams, look at what places and spaces could be automated the most easily and start there. Use a wedge approach. Do one small project for one team that needs to automate one aspect of how they are engaging with your account holders and within your institution. And once you do that, you'll develop that level of comfortability with artificial intelligence, with evaluating players that could be a third-party service provider for your institution. And then it will also help you develop a fluency to educate your other teams to look within themselves to see where AI might be able to provide value for them.
I love it. No, that's a good takeaway. I love it. So just pick one area of focus, dive down, learn, get comfortable, and then pick the next spot. All right, Jacqueline, what's your bit of advice for institutions just starting to look at considering an increased investment in AI to accelerate their journey?
Well, I kind of overlap with Angela's. I use a little different language, but there's similar sentiment. Is really one, start with clarity on why before jumping into the how. Anchor your AI. So there's 4 points. Start with clarity on why before jumping into the how.
Love it.
Number 2, anchor your investments in business impact and a strong data foundation. Number 3, start small, similar to what Angela was saying, take a wedge approach, but think big. And 4th, ensure that AI works with people, not just for them. So, as Angela was saying, organizations should begin by identifying challenges or inefficiencies where AI can create tangible impact. It sounds like this crew started with AI, then they're starting to do more operational efficiencies, and then something future, which we haven't gotten the results of our poll yet. Regardless of it all, there's that same formula where, make sure to pause and start slow, figure out start with the 4 things that I had suggested, but then know that once you wedge it, your acceleration can start once the foundational work is done around you clarified your objectives, your priorities, your resources, timelines, you're refining things, you're piloting. So that wedge approach, you've learned from the past with AI, you're building more momentum, you're introducing ops efficiencies. And so your approach maybe was you did some rapid prototypes, you piloted, and then you start to scale, which is where that acceleration and optimization can occur. And you're not forgetting about data readiness and the governance checklist we talked about. And then critically, you're not forgetting that AI adoption, no matter today and in the future, is as much about the people as it's about technology. So making sure that you have change management, upskilling of your teams, you're fostering a culture where AI is really seen as an enabler versus a disruptor. So it's not just AI as standalone investment, it's a catalyst. We as leaders and humans drive it, our insights, our design, and we just partner with the technology to deliver it ultimately.
I love it. I love it. No, this is great. And so I know we're kind of wrapping up here. This last survey for forward thinking was folks were focusing on operational improvements and automation. So I guess maybe we helped that along. Now, ladies, this was just such a fun conversation, really. So thank you so much for your expertise today. So to your audiences, if you have any questions, like, you can reach out to us, and, here you can scan my code. If you need my contact information, I can help you either on your journey or get you connected to folks that, if I can't help you, these ladies can, or other folks. And if you want to see the replay of this, I will be making it available on my YouTube channel. So just go to YouTube at instantpaymentsmaven.com. And our next session is going to be, I think, on cross-border payments, and I should have the date up. Anyway, just follow me on LinkedIn, and I will be having another one in like maybe 2 weeks or so. The next one's going to be on cross-border. But anyway, it's been a pleasure. So give these ladies a hand. Can we do a virtual hand for these ladies? I love it. All right. Thanks, guys. Have a good one.
Thank you, everybody.